Hi, this is Moze Jacobs for DeBarra Spoken Word, and I'm really pleased to be speaking here with, maybe she's the star of the show, I'm not sure yet. That's Catherine Ronan, but the other star of the show is Dominic Taylor, all the way from Limerick, and Catherine all the way from Bandon, I think.
That's it?
Yeah, okay. And the occasion is, of course, that on the 6th of December, Catherine will launch her poetry collection, Elemental Skin, and that's really it. There it is, burning of the page. And I just listened to the interview we did in June, because then you had a session before you were published, and we discussed being published, and you said, I just quote, I hope the collection is out by Christmas.
I know.
Wow.
Isn't that manifestation in all its guises?
Because at that time, were you already in contact with Dominic? Or when did you sort of get in contact with Dominic? Because Dominic is publishing you, or
Revival Press.
Revival Press.
Yeah.
Which I think is an imprint of the Limerick Writers Centre.
That's correct, yeah.
But is it also in a way your baby?
Well, it is in a way, but we started it all. The origins of the whole thing began in the White House bar in Limerick in 2003, when Barney Sheehan and myself began the White House Poetry Revival readings, and they lasted for 13 years. And during that time, we had published quite a few poets, a few books, and I always used the imprint Revival for them, as we had the White House Poetry Revival, to keep that link together, right? And it started when it finished. I started the Limerick Writers Centre, and kept the Revival Press imprint as part of the Limerick Writers Centre, and our community publishing program, which sort of covers more genres than just poetry. But Revival Press is exclusively for the publication of poetry. So I love that link between the White House, because the White House is a very important cultural sort of place for people in Limerick, and especially poetry. It goes all the way back, I suppose, Catherine will understand this, to the mystical realms of the old Irish bards. But it was revived in 1954 by our Limerick poet Desmond O'Grady, and he began the poetry circle there in 1954. So Barney revived that in 2003, and so we've kept that link going. And that link, I always find it fascinating, because it goes back, because Desmond was a student of Ezra Pound, right? He was his secretary at one stage. So that link between Pound, Desmond, the White House, Revival Press, I love that. And it goes back even further, because Pound was very influenced by the writings of Dante. So I see that as a link between everything that's happened with us here, going back that far. I know it might sound a bit outlandish, but listen, it's some sort of a legacy there for us to work on.
That's great. And may I ask, how did you and Catherine, or Catherine and you, how did you meet? I mean, when did you first became aware of each other?
Well, I emailed Dominic and said that, I'm familiar with the work of some poets that you've published, like Mac Mooney, Martin Vernon, Michael Durack. And I said, would you read my manuscript? And he kindly said yes.
And is that, I mean, when did you do this? When did you emailed him?
I'd say it was I'd say it was about a year ago. It is
about a year ago. Yeah. I didn't get around to it immediately, but I did eventually, and I was struck by that sort of that she brought me into a place that I'm very interested in myself, in that mystical type of realm, as I mentioned earlier. And she is a kind of a visionary poet. That struck me straight away, and I like that. There's too much probably very deftly crafted poetry out there, that comes out of sort of universities and creative writing, NAs and all that, you know. So Catherine's work is a bit of fresh air. I didn't like the way she'd laid it out to me. She submitted it. I felt because most her performance of the work is the thing, but it has to look well on the page for us as well. So I wanted her to recraft it for the written page as against for the spoken word. And
Okay.
when she did that, yeah, I mean, I was more than happy to publish it.
Okay, that's great. Could you say a little bit more about the idea of visionary? How would you define
Well,
it? How would you
it's coming back into vogue again. I think a lot of people are accessing that area for their poetry. John W. Sexton writes a lot about it, and he mentioned the name to me. He did a lecture for us there last year during our April is Poetry Month about imbas for Asney, which is a sort of the gift of clairvoyance and a visionary ability. Put things, you know, to write things like the ancient bards of Ireland were, I suppose, notorious for it. I mean, that's how they wrote their poetry. You know?
Yeah.
So I'm interested in all that type of thing. You know, what comes from within, as such.
Would you, Catherine? Would you say that you're slightly clairvoyant and visionary?
I would say, well, as Paul Casey says, I'm shamanic, and I definitely believe in that. Like, you know, and I do believe that there, like, even the elemental skin title, I do believe that there's a world that we inhabit between the physical and the imaginary, between the magical and the reality. Like, I think that they're like, so I like to explore my internal landscape and put it on the page. And
how do you access your internal landscape?
well, I've always had an internal landscape, really, but originally I wanted to be a painter. I wanted to paint, you know, but I mean, so I tried lots of art lessons and all that sort of thing, but I just didn't have it. But then I realized I could paint with words. So that's what I do. I paint with words.
Okay. And if you say internal landscape, I mean, what do I picture? A landscape? What do I picture?
It's like another world, like, really.
Okay.
Like,
is it always the same?
It's like opening a door and going into this kind of, as Dominic said, this mystical field. Like it's like sometimes I'm just a conduit that just you have to practice it a lot to be able to open the door and then allow whatever wants to come in, and then you're the conduit, and you kind of, well, there's a poem in the book called Hymn, and this poem came to me about 5 o'clock in the morning one morning, and I got up and I just wrote it out, and it was like I had nothing to do with him. Him came to me, you know. It was like I was telling his story, but he was telling me his story. I don't know who him was, but him was probably just like, as John W. Sexton said, he was probably just a light of all the men who had the same story, who went from Ireland to England and couldn't come back. Like he was just an embodiment of that. And I'm just very open to that sort of thing. And I also believe in synchrodestiny and, you know, stars aligning and all that.
Did you just say synchro destiny?
Synchrodestiny, yeah. So some people
never heard that word. What?
Oh,
something that means, okay. Could you do you have him in front of you by any chance?
Him? Oh, I do. Of course.
Really?
I will.
Of course.
Of course. Him. And I'm very close to him, even though I have no actual picture of him, but I imagine there are lots of hymns out there. In the iron lung of the working man's club, he swallows whiskey neat, recites the fourth sorrowful mystery of worn rosary, and strokes his palate with a tongue craving well water. A taste of flaked paint, ore and titch. This magic's a new thirst for success, beyond the constant sound in his pockets of loose change, black tissues, and a picture of his mother washing her hair in a rusty barrel of harvested rain. He stands his thin collar up and makes a fesh of staggering back to the numberless flat. Without removing a thread, he yellows the bed. Gooseberries burst in his mouth. Eggs bubble, begging for salt. He falls asleep for 2 years before they find him. Skinless and nameless, him.
Thank you. It's beautiful. Could I ask you one thing? Because now I can see your mouth, but could you maybe, do you have a laptop?
Yeah.
Could you maybe adjust the angle a little bit? Because when you read, I do, or when you sometimes, I do not see your mouth. And yeah, great. Thank you. Because I think I'm going to ask you at the end of this recording for another poem, if you could read another poem. If you say him came to you, in what was the vision, or what came to you? The words, just the words as they are there, or the person?
Just the words as they are there. And as I said before, I think in my last interview to you, I hear these words coming in my right ear. They never come in my left ear for some reason. They always come in my right ear.
Yeah.
And I suppose when the children were smaller, I used to stop the Hoover, and like when I'd hear it coming in, I'd write the piece of paper all over the house. And my husband said to me, "Are you ever going to do anything with those spider writings?" And I said, "I will when the children are grown up." And the children got to a certain stage, so I threw myself then into writing groups and poetry collectives and DeBarra spoken word, of course, and multiple workshops, and I've just completely immersed myself. Now I've been writing since I was 9, so
yeah,
it's not an overnight thing,
That poem is on the other recording about your mother, and because you said shamanic, and I think Dominic, you also called her shamanic in the announcement of the reading you did in the White House in Limerick.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, that was from the bio.
That was on the bio. Okay. So what does the word shamanic mean to both of you? Like Catherine first. What does shamanic mean?
Well, shamanic means that there's a connection between everything, and I kind of relate shamanism to kind of like almost a telepathic thing as well. That it's like, if you're thinking about somebody a lot, and next thing you might meet them, or they might phone you out of the blue, like that. We only access a very small part of our brain, and we're very powerful beings, really, and we don't use all the power that we have, because the power has been lost. I mean, like as you go back, people were more shamanic than they are now. But like as Dominic said, there's a change coming, because like we went from being so religious to being kind of secular, but that there's a gap in between, and the gap is for the spirit. And like we must kind of try and regain the knowledge that we've lost.
Okay. What about you, Dominic?
Well, I think that it's correct what she says there, but we've been too just getting back to nature, I think, makes us, or experiencing nature, not just getting back, really experience it, is being shamanic in many ways. But I suppose shamanism is being going into tapping into another world, another sort of reality that's there, but in our normal life, our normally tech lives that we have today, where our culture really is constraining us and keeping us, the property of the man, so to speak, that we need to break out of that, find more fertile ground, and think poets like Catherine can do that, which is a natural gift for doing that. But we all need to break out. I mean, we all love to go out of the cities into the countryside for a while. That's, we're opening up new avenues of reality for ourselves. And if we're conscious, being conscious of it is the thing, to make sure that I know that I am walking in the forest or in the bog, wherever it is, You have to be aware that you are doing this and communing with what is all around us. So we can be shamanic in many small ways.
And has either of you ever met a real shaman?
Well, I hope I'm talking to Catherine there.
I take that
and
down.
poets
I
like
think
John W.
Yeah.
You know, great advocate of it, I think, as well.
brilliant. He's brilliant, yeah.
Mm.
As an example, if I get really, really tired, I go up to the back of my garden and just lie on the grass and try and feel the earth. You know, like it's part of grounding yourself to nature. As Dominic said, we're kind of constrained, with the screens and kind of the pace. But like just to take like 5 minutes out to lie on the grass and kind of like just like we're only temporary here on the earth, but to feel all the other energy rising from the earth from people that were here before. So I live in an area that's full of history. So this house was built on, it was built during just after the famine, but there are like lazy beds underneath the floorboards. There's a famine relief road up here. There's a Fullock Fia across the road. So the area that I live in has been inhabited by like thousands of people before
Megalithic people even, because that's a megalithic
yes,
place,
absolutely.
isn't
Yeah.
it?
And to lie on the ground, you can really feel their energies coming up through the ground. So that would like to kind of be receptive to the energies that are around you,
Okay. And do you both of you feel that that's like a kind of Celtic thing, Irish thing?
Well, I think it probably is these days. We associate, because we're living in Ireland, we associate it with the sort of Celtic peoples and that. But I think it's been in all cultures. I mean, the Aboriginals in Australia would have a very similar outlook, I think, on things. So I don't think it's exclusively to Ireland or to the Irish, but we have a certain connection, say, with the elemental, maybe that other more sort of first world countries might not have. But I wouldn't know. I don't know. I haven't been abroad very much in the past few years, or studied their cultures. But I'm sure every culture has that elemental aspect to their nature as well.
Since you mentioned the word elemental, Catherine, can you say a little bit more about your title, The Elemental Skin?
Well, it's exploring the area between the real world and the imaginal world and the magic that's in between everyday events. Like it's kind of that it's exploring that middle corridor.
So it wouldn't be the same as the skin on our physical bodies?
Well, it is in that it's the human element. It's like we all have skin, but like elemental skin is different. Elemental skin is that is kind of like the pores are open to receiving what's elemental,
Okay.
and going forward with that,
Okay, great. The last time we also talked a little bit about the phenomenon of rejection. Now, obviously, you've been accepted, but it's obviously like being published is a bit of a holy grail, apart from winning prizes and becoming mega rich and other things like that. So, Dominic, you're a performing artist as a musician and songwriter, and I don't know if you write poetry and publish poetry.
Yeah, I mean, I do write poetry, but not recently. I haven't. Okay, I'm concentrating on songwriting. But what you want to know about publishing, is that what you?
Well, as a publisher, do you feel that you're like a slightly different person than if you're yourself performer, and you must also, you must be selecting people to get published or not, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're not mainstream publishers, right? Looking for public people to publish and sort of send them out to make sort of business out. It's not. I don't like to think of it what we do as a business. We haven't got a business model as such. As I said, we began in the White House, right? And we had a lot of poets reading through the years, a lot of local poets who were finding it extremely difficult to get published by any of the sort of mainstream publishers out there. And, that's why we started, because we were helping people get into print. I believe everybody who's a serious writer and does it consistently and persistent, deserves to have their work in print, to have an artifact of that work. And so we started there, and we there's many different reasons why we might publish somebody, not always because it's brilliant poetry. The person takes center stage for us as well. Why do they want to get published? Are they supportive of other poets? Do they sort of attend readings or book launches, things like that? I want to see how they're committed to it. And it's a community publishing. We have volunteers who put the book together for us, the pre-printing process part of it, which makes we can do it that little bit cheaper then, because we don't have to do it paid commercial rates for the pre-production. But the printing, unfortunately, has gone up 70% this year alone.
Wow.
So it's very it's more difficult now to break even. That's our goal with every book, is that we don't want to lose money on it, right?
Okay.
We want to break even, right?
Okay.
So that we can continue publishing the next person, right? The first poetry book we ever published, as part of Revival, was John Liddy, a Limerick poet, and we actually got a donation for that book from Frank McCourt, the author of Angela's Ashes, right? Now, I think he sent us €1,200 to do that book. Now, I said to myself at the time, I'm going to keep that €1,200 and turn it into another book and into another book. I always considered it lucky money that he donated that money. And I think I still have that €1,200. And it's 161 books down the road. So
Wow.
I turned it over and added to it bit by bit, incrementally, building a small pot of money that we could publish people and take risks that I might normally not take with some people. And we have lost money on some books. But if I can keep that little pot of gold going, it doesn't matter. And I can stop at any time. You know what I mean? We're not in debt. If I stopped in the morning, no one's going to suffer,
But you said if taking risks, does that mean publishing somebody that you sort of know might be, because brilliant poets might be total loners who do not frequent launches or whatever, and they're still publishing. Are you talking about that kind of risk?
Yeah, the risk of them not promoting their work. Okay. Sometimes they just like to have the book and not just leave it in the corner and say, yeah, great, lovely. That happens. That can happen.
That won't happen with me.
Not with Catherine.
No. That won't happen with me. I'm looking for world domination here, Dominic.
So, there are, but I take small risks. I'm not a gambler. We only print 200 copies of a book. So look at, if everything goes skyways, we're not going to be dead in the water.
But if Catherine, which I wouldn't put that beyond her, if she managed to sell out 200 books in record time, will you do another print run?
Yeah, we can reprint. I've discussed it with her, it's hard to sell 200 books, and it's even harder to sell the second 200 books if you've sold the first 200 books. So I mean, we have to balance it out. But if we sell 200 books, we're going to have a profit, so we probably will be able to afford to reprint.
And do you have connections with foreign publishers? Or do your poets get published, abroad?
But see, that's the limitation. The limitations of just being a community and not being a mainstream publisher. We can't. Distribution is an impossibility for us outside of our own local area, and what the poet can do for themselves as regards distribution. We haven't got any other distributor. We don't distribute with the big distributors like Eason's and Argosy. They won't take you on anyway.
No.
The investment to have that, to be able to do that, might mean you might have to print 500 books and put 250 of them out into a distribution chain on a sale or return basis. So you may never get any return on that. So don't do it. No point.
I have two invitations to New York. So don't you worry, Dominic. I'm going to New York, baby.
Good stuff.
That's great. That's brilliant. And how does it feel to I mean, I can sort of imagine how it feels to be rejected by a publisher, but how does it feel as a publisher to reject someone?
I don't like it, rejecting people, but I don't do call outs either, right? So I mean, if anybody sends me stuff, they're taking a chance, right?
And do you read everything you get sent, or not really?
I used to. I don't at the moment, right? I have another appointed another poet, local poet here, to look after a lot of the manuscripts to come in from now on. Tommy Collins is his name, so he's reading them now, and I've stepped away from that type of thing, you know.
Yeah, because it must be. I mean, you realistically, you can't spend all your waking hours looking at manuscripts and reading poetry and doing everything that you probably need to be doing as a publisher and then as a human being, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I want to step back a little bit from it, because you know, I'm not getting any younger either.
Well, I mean, that seems to be the human condition.
Yeah, but I'd like to hand it on to other people. I mean, at the moment, I suppose if I stop doing it, it's going to stop. But if there's somebody else there who's actively working with me, and they can keep it going. Yeah,
and it's quite a feat. I mean, you know, you publish so many books, and you're doing it. You know, as you say, you don't lose money. Maybe you don't make a lot of money. Probably
no,
not at all.
There's no money in poetry.
This can make a small. I'm very proud that some of our poets, anyway, who work with us and go out to sell their books and attend readings, and they will make a few bucks. You know, it might be very much, but it won't be. You know, they will make something.
Yeah, and especially if they win prizes and things like that.
Yeah, that's the kind of cream, isn't it? You know?
I once read about, like, there was a $1 million or whatever it was put up in some Arab country to be won by a lucky poet. A fund for poetry. That sounds great, doesn't it? Maybe the government could do that. Arab princes or whatever. Okay, Catherine, would you have another poem to read at the end? Thank you. I want to thank you, Dominic, for coming here and being with Catherine, maybe, and you know, love your guitars in the back. You have
it's purely for display.
Oh, yes. No, but you're a singer-songwriter, and you have
that's what that's what I like to do. You know, but I'm a terrible performer.
Are you?
I like writing them, but performing is not my bag, really. But I do perform.
Are you anxious when you perform?
Very, very. Yeah, I have to play now Sunday. A book launch we're doing on the writings of Jim Kemmy, the local TD here, who died in 1997. And I wrote a song 23 years ago for him. And I said I'd perform it Sunday at the launch. But it's taken away all the good of doing the launch because I'm so anxious about it.
Are you anxious in advance?
In a what, sorry?
Are you anxious before you start?
Oh, very, yeah.
But then you stay anxious when you start?
Yeah, I mean, you try to turn it from anxiety into excitement or something like that, or, you know, but when it's finished, that's when I relax.
What about you, Catherine? Because I have the feeling that you don't have a lot of stage fright. Am I right?
Well, like Dominic said, I turn, like, if I feel nervous or anxious, I say, you're not anxious, you're excited, right? And the other thing that I use, and this is really my major tool, and this happened to me in Bantry. I went up and I said, I'll read first, like this is part of the Bantry Literary Festival, the open mic. And I turned around, there's about 9 or 10 people in the room, and I said, oh, I'm happy to go first. That's no problem, like, and she was saying, oh, that's great now. And then I was chatting away. And when I turned around, the whole place was absolutely stuffed. I mean, stuffed, and like I'd say over 100 people. I was like, oh my God. So my second tool, so apart from saying you're not anxious, you're excited, the second tool is when I'm taken by surprise like that, I say to myself, and I say to the audience, I am delighted to be here, because, the more nervous I am, I elongate the word. I'm delighted to be here. But then I am saying to myself, really, you should be delighted to be here, because you can do this. And think of all the people who can't do this. So you should be delighted to be here, and you should, it's a joy it's a joy really to enjoy performing, but sometimes you can't help like at a particular instance now stands out where I was like, oh my God, there's so many people, but I say I'm delighted to be here, and then that kind of that's my second tool to kind of convince myself that I am delighted to be here.
So it's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, next time if somebody hears you speaking, you say, I'm delighted to be here, Dominic, maybe it works.
Yeah, well, I'm okay speaking
Yes.
at events, that doesn't faze me too much. It's performing my own work.
Okay.
That's what gets me. And especially when I'm trying to play the guitar at the same time.
Yeah, well, your poetry comes across very calm anyway, Dominic, that I've heard you read.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay at the spoken word. It's the songwriting and the performing of songs and that.
As they say in Ireland, fair play to you that you still do it, regardless of that.
Yeah. Well, that's just a decision I decided I would do. As I used to write songs, I started off writing songs back when I was in my teenage years, right? But I gave that up. It was only when I was sort of reintroduced to poetry that eventually I got back into songwriting. So I started writing poetry seriously when we started I would say around the turn of about 1995, 6, 7, around then. And but in 2003, then when the White House began, that sort of led me on to back into songwriting. And that's what I'm doing now more than anything else.
So it's a teenage dream, basically.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And Catherine, please take it away with the poem.
Well, we were talking about rejection earlier. So this poem is about rejection and about how you really cannot give up at all. I am Crow. I finger a glass full of eyes and throw them at the mirror of disbelief. Others stand in the shadows of all things silent and secret, like snuff. Tracks lay where they always did, sweating with error and wayward thought. Trapped throats find words tightly wrapped in bloodied bandages on footpaths. I pack that alligator case, and with every scale of thumb-nailed life, I climb mountains of oily skin to become Crow, and then you see me at last.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Crocodile. Can't wait until the 6th of December in the DeBarra Spoken Word, Clonakilty.
Thank you.
2023. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.